My name is Rick Sundahl. I'm with Grey Wolf Systems, and I am hoping that I meet your expectations. One of the things I tell all my employees is the only way you can piss a customer off is not meet their expectations, so the key to that is set their expectations correctly. So that being said, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and I'm going to go through a little intro. How many people in here are propeller heads, that they're technical and they understand IT? Okay, cool. How many people in here are accounting type people? Okay. How many people are managers, executives, that kind of stuff? Okay. So that helps me to position this because I can go however deep we want to go. I am not a fan of PowerPoints. Okay. I use it purely as a bookmark for where I want to talk about things. I am hoping to do as much demo as we possibly can. So if you guys say, hey, while I'm doing my demo, hey, can I do this? And I'm going to maybe go out. Bear with me. That is an extremely risky proposition, that it may not work the way I plan on it. So I'm willing to take that risk and say, okay, I'll show you what I've got and do more demos than PowerPoint presentations. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's dig into it. Here's what I want to cover. And sharing is an interesting term. I want to talk about the who, what, why, where, those kinds of things. But before I get into that, let me just give you a quick intro. I know there are a couple of you that are customers actually, but how many people in here have heard of Grey Wolf Systems before? Okay, cool. Let me give you a quick little bio of who we are. And on our website, everything I'm telling you right now is on our website from that perspective. We have been in business for, 1992, so that makes it 24 years come November, because we're going to be in that long, 34 years. I started out, I actually came from a wholesale distribution background. My dad was an auto parts distributor. So I have unloaded 40-foot trucks, and back in the days, not all of you have enough gray hair, back with a Cardex system, just if anybody remembers what a Cardex system is. So that's how we kept track. Inventory management was an oxymoron back in those days. So I came from that background. I ended up going to work for a company that you may have heard of. It's called Infor. They're a competitor to Epicor. I ended up working for a small company that started out called R&D Systems, and we were responsible for the SX Enterprise. I actually sold the first copy of SX Enterprise to users at the time. We have morphed through the years. We started out as a networking company. We got into client server. We were one of the first ones to get into the dot-bomb era. When 1996 came about, we were helping people with those kinds of things. We moved into other areas and then ultimately got into becoming a software as a service organization. We have been doing software as a service probably for about the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, of where we hosted our solutions. Prior to that, we were doing those solutions where they were on site, doing it on your site, or doing it other different ways. We do basically two things, and that's what I'm going to steal. There's an old saying when you do presentations: tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So I'm telling you what I'm going to tell you. We focus on two basic areas. That is transactional things like EDI, and then we focus on static information, data maintenance, things like customer information, product information, those kinds of things. So we've kind of delineated between those two, and we offer it as a solution that is, like I said, it's a SaaS solution, subscription-based, and so you don't have to have anything on your system other than maybe some APIs, and we'll get into some of that discussion as well. By the way, who knows what APIs are? Okay, that gives me a feel for it. Cool. All right, why share? This is, I think, one of the things. Has anybody ever seen this book? And this is really old. It's, first edition came in 1986, but I remember when this came out. Everything I really need to know, I learned in kindergarten. And there's a lot of truth to that, right? Where, okay, it talks about most of what I really need to know, it's simple things. But if you look at it, the real key was share everything, right? My personality type is to be transparent. I want to lay everything out on the table. I have my employees read a book called Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. The concept is, let's lay everything on the table. If you like what we do, cool, let's have a business. I'd rather have you walk away friends than promise you something that we can't deliver upon and then have you walk away 6 months later being pissed off, okay? So I believe in this concept of sharing. Well, all right, why do you share? Well, one of the reasons from a business perspective is efficiency. It makes you more efficient in some of the things that you're doing, that you don't have to worry about what haven't I told people, what have I lied about, what have I misrepresented. I want to share some information, maybe accuracy. We're going to get into that when we start talking about things like EDI. If I share that information in its raw form, I don't have to worry about being the human intelligence stuff, the human factor that breaks everything. Maybe I have some visibility. I want to share it because I can have people, customers, vendors, see what I'm doing and have what they can need to get through. And the obvious reason people share, especially now with social media, I still get a kick out of it. I'm old enough now, I don't understand why people talk about how Joe just had a Diet Pepsi, raised the roof, right? Who cares, okay? Promoting what you're trying to do is part of the reason why you maybe share some things. This is an article that came from IBM. Data sharing is the process of making organizations data resources available to multiple applications, users, and or organizations. Pretty straightforward, right? Sounds simple. It's not as much what you're sharing as how do you do it and how do you do it appropriately. And that's hopefully what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to have this in the PowerPoint. You guys can read this. Like I said, I want to get into the demo. Now let's get into some statistics and some facts. More than 70% of decision makers are expanding their ability to use external data. Let that sink in a little bit here. External data. One of the biggest things I have a problem with AI on is intellectual property. Where's the majority of the data that's going into AI coming from? It's coming from websites that they're actually stealing intellectual property from other places that weren't necessarily legal before. It's external data sources is where we're getting some of that information, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. So, managing product data. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of the static information, just getting into PIMS. Interesting. 1,000 new SKUs per year, hundreds of attributes per SKU. Have you guys felt it? How many people in here have more than 1,000 SKUs that they sell under P21? Not catalog. How many have more than 10,000? How many have more than 100,000? Okay, you guys are the ones that really need to be listening, because that's the maintenance stuff that's going to be really tough, is to try to figure out how do you maintain that information and how do you have a single source of truth for that kind of information. Okay, here's some of the 6 ways that product content syndication. By the way, this came from PIMCore. I'm gonna full disclosure. We have a solution called Keystone. Keystone is based on the open source edition of PIMCore. So just full disclosure, I'm stealing some of their thunder for a reason. But there are 6 product content reasons that increase revenue. Accelerate your time to market. Save costly resources, save. Build trust and loyalty, scale your business, and enhance business agility. All those things sound like mom and apple pie, right? But if you think about each one of those, they actually have some value to it. And one of the things that comes into play, and you guys should recognize this, manufacturer, distributor, merchant, how do you make sure that you have product, this first bullet point, ensuring product consistency across all channels? Now, anybody in here a manufacturer? Okay. Do you share, you guys sell through distributors, let's start there. Do you share product information to your distributors? Didn't think so. Why not? Distributors. How much do the manufacturers share information with you? Not as much as you'd like, right? Okay. That's kind of this sharing aspect that it really kind of starts at the headwaters. The manufacturers should really be sharing with the distributors. And then ultimately you want to share it with your consumers, whether it be a contractor, your website, whatever. We're going to talk some about those kinds of things as well. Benefits of EDI. Now, let me get to a definitional aspect of what EDI is. Obviously it stands for electronic data interchange. That everybody knows what that means. Everybody knows that since the 1950s, EDI has been around. Everybody's heard the term called ANSI X12, which means, oh, this is all pain in the ass to have to deal with, right? Let's change that paradigm. One of the things I really want you guys to start doing is changing your paradigm of what you maybe heard in the past. EDI, in our definition, is a system-to-system sharing of information with trading partners. It's not just ANSI X12, it's not just flat files, It's not just transactions, it's anything that you want to share that goes system to system. So for example, it could be as simple as we've got a customer who has a customer that wants to get pricing information. That customer emails into a general mailbox, they email in a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet has a list of their product numbers. That's all it has. We walk through that product set, walk through a cross-reference table, takes their customer product information, goes against the Epicor P21 product information, walks through then for that customer who we know, walks through each of the products and says, okay, what's their price for each of those products, updates the spreadsheet, and emails it back to them with no human intervention. That is a form of EDI, okay? So EDI, when we're talking about it today, I don't want people to think of, there are other EDI providers out there. We have a broader perspective that it's not just doing ANSI X12, A10s, A50s, and that kind of stuff. I'll use those numbers when we're talking today, but that's not what we're talking about as just being EDI. I'm gonna, benefits, same kind of benefits, I'm not gonna go into. Here's the thing, who should you share with? Okay, obvious, right? Share with your customers. Now the question is, we're gonna talk about what do you share? But you wanna share with customers, that's the obvious reason. How many people in here, as a wholesale distributor, are a sales-driven organization? If you all don't raise your hands, I'm gonna be very surprised, okay? You're all a sales-driven organization. Sales, I'll bet the CEO, his best friend is the VP of sales, right? They all go play golf together and that's where the money goes, because that's what's the lifeblood of a distributor. But there are others that you need to maybe share information with. Vendors, and especially the big boys, right? The big boys want you to send it back. Now, you may not want to, but they are going to ask you for it. Let's go down a little bit. This is where I want you to broaden it. Everybody talks, that's the title of the session, right? I said share it with customers and vendors. But there's more than that. This is the part of the puzzle that gets really interesting. Shops. Shopify. It blows my mind how big and fancy and broad that they've gotten. We've got a customer that Shopify is more important than the ERP system. And they put their product information in there, and that's really the kind of the where everything starts. How many people in here are using Shopify today? Okay, you almost seem afraid to say that.
Very limited.
Very limited.
Yeah.
By the way, the architecture in Shopify to share with them is a nightmare. Total nightmare. If you're thinking about it, we've got it done, but it took a hell of a lot of work to do that. Simple little thing. Everybody know what a variant is? Okay, variant is, okay, I've got a t-shirt, and variants are a blue t-shirt, a yellow t-shirt, a red t-shirt, and so forth. In Shopify, every product has to have at least one variant. Now think about that in P21. If you had to have, for every product, you had to have one variant and stored in P21, that'd be a nightmare, and it is. But that doesn't mean it goes away, right? Because there is more and more, the distributor has to figure out how they get to your customer base. If you're sales driven, I guarantee you your CEO is probably already thinking about going to Shopify. And how do I get that information to Shopify? Or the big boys, right? Anybody in here selling on Grainger? Anybody selling on Home Depot? Anybody selling on Lowe's, on Amazon, right? That's a whole new channel that we're having to deal with. And how do you get that information to them? More importantly, how is that information consistent of what you give to them that the outside sales reps are giving to the customers that they're meeting face to face? It's got to be a consistent single source of truth. All right. This is one I had some questions on last night. Coupa. Anybody doing Coupa and Ariba and that kind of fun stuff? Are you enjoying it? That's so old school, it's kind of scary. I don't know how much longer they're gonna go because of the previous slides, right? With the fact that people are selling through Lowe's or some of the other places. Dealing with Coupa, which, oh, by the way, we've been doing that for a long time. This is probably the biggest thing that surprised the hell out of me. Source is ECDB. 3/4 of the total e-commerce revenue is transacted via marketplaces, not your own website. Everybody's got their own website, right? Who is selling on their e-commerce site today? David, you can't raise your hand, David. Okay? How much are you selling of your business today on them? 2, 3, 5%? If you're hitting 10%, you're doing really well. Not a lot of people are selling on their own website. This is where people are going to, like I was talking about, the Amazons, the eBays, those kinds of things is what's happening. That's what surprised me. And here's the other kicker. Let's look at it by continent. Asia, South America, 97, 96% are going through marketplaces. Think about that for a second here. If they're doing it, you know, we're behind when we're down here in the North America, not quite as bad as some of the others, but that kind of shows some interesting things. And how they've been changing over time. All right, you guys came in here because you knew you needed to share, right? I'm not trying to, but I wanted to give you, you'll have this PowerPoint available to you. Use some of these statistics for your internal kind of stuff, but it gives you a little bit of why you want to do this. Now, what are you going to share? We're going to break it out. We've been doing EDI, like I said, since 1997. We have been doing it with Anti-X12 for decades. It's a pain in the ass. We have made a strategic decision that we're going to separate transactional information from static information. If you're doing EDI today, 850, 855, 8, we call it the big 8, the 810, the 850, the 855, the 856, going in and out. That's our big 8, okay? For those that aren't technical, what that means, an 850, this is really good where it gets weird, an 850 in becomes a sales order in your system from your customer, okay? So an 850 in coming from a customer that creates the order. An 855 is the acknowledgement. You send that back out. Now, there's a concept called a 997. For those of you that remember a fax machine, all in 997 is very similar to a fax machine saying, I sent the fax. It doesn't confirm anything more than the fact that there was a transmission that happened. So it's called a functional acknowledgement. Don't worry about that too much anymore in today's day and age. It's nice, but that's not an acknowledgement. A purchase order acknowledgement is what we're talking about. Those are important. Advanced ship notices. Those are really kind of cool stuff, especially if you start getting into near real-time kind of VMI stuff and those kinds of things. VMI is vendor managed inventory. And then the 810 out, getting the invoice out. And then if you flip it around to the vendor side, it just flips to the other side. So an 850 out, you're sending a purchase order to a vendor. They send you back a purchase order acknowledgement. They send you back an advanced ship notice. They send you back an invoice. Those are the big 8. Okay, those are all transactional. Don't worry about the 860 and the 820. They're going to down the road. They get important. But today, for our conversation, let's focus on just purely the transactional aspects. Now, why is that important? Why do I want to even do it? Let's go back to the reasons why. Efficiency, vision, promo, all those 4 things we talked about. If you're doing EDI, and when I say EDI, I'm not talking about the numbers here. I'm talking you're sending a purchase order out. You're getting invoices back. You're sharing information with them, and you're also becoming a hell of a lot more efficient. In theory, by the way, never say never, never say always, right? It's one of the few times I'll say it. You will never ever have an EDI transaction that happens 100% of the time, all the time, accurately. Never happens. Okay, one of the few times you can say it. Why? Because sometimes when you have that happen, for example, you get a purchase order from a customer. Purchase order customer is a human being. That purchase order, oh, by the way, could be as much as that they're in QuickBooks, they're putting in a PO in QuickBooks, and they're emailing you a PDF file format. Which, oh, by the way, we've got a customer in here that we did that for, where we map it out and we bring it into P21, and they actually then have that order come right into P21 automatically. Okay, that sounds great. But do you think that they're always going to have the right part numbers in it? That it's going to be the right part number that you have in P21? or it's maybe not even in the cross-reference that you've got set up that's not there. Okay, now the problem is, I'm an EDI system, I'm a monkey. That's all I am. I'm gonna do whatever you tell me to do. Now you've gotta make some business rule decisions. If it's an item that comes in that we don't recognize, what are your options? One, cancel the whole order, send it to a sales rep. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose of what we're doing, right? Second, ignore the line item and do everything else and send that one item to the sales rep. Let them deal with it. That's actually a pretty better idea. Third option, accept all the line items in, and for that one line item, make it into a non-stock. Think about that one for a minute. Customer ends up having a -1, -2, -3. Now you've got a non-stock for each one of those different elements. Now you end up with a database environment that's gonna be just a bunch of garbage that's in there. Now you gotta think about that, and we'll get into the product side then later. So you need to think through, when you're doing this, how do you deal with the exceptions? So when I get into the demo, EDI is extremely difficult to demo. Why? Because in theory, it should all just happen. When your customer sends in a PO, it should place the order, and it's just like the inside sales rep keying it into the system. So in theory, it should just happen. That, if you're doing it well, you're probably getting maybe an 80, 85, ideally a 90% accuracy on that type of stuff. A lot of people are seeing 50% based upon, especially when you're doing customer side. When you're doing vendor side, it's a hell of a lot easier, right? Because you're sending the PO. They're just sending stuff back related to the PO. You're sending an invoice back. Now, what ends up happening typically on that side is the vendor may reject the document. Remember I told you on your side that you may, oh, how am I dealing with it? Now you get into the whole concept, who's the tail and who's the dog? Okay? If you're talking about customers, as a general rule, you're going to be the tail. They're going to tell you what they want to do. Why? Because you're a sales-driven organization. Customer's always right. You're gonna do whatever they tell you, and whatever file format they want to send it to you, whatever way they do it, how they process it, they're gonna tell you how to do it. They're the dog, right? But on the vendor side, you're the customer. So in theory, you should be the dog, and they should be the tail. Until you start getting with Walmart, 3M, all these guys that say, thou shalt do it this way. Now you get to the fun part of trying to implement this. This is no longer the technological aspect, it's the workflow and the business processes that will do that. And oh, by the way, you throw this in the ChatGPT, don't do whatever it tells you, because it'll be wrong. Now, let's get over to the static stuff. These are the actual EDI document numbers that are out there today, okay? So an 832, an 846, those are the big two, 852 sometimes. We are doing that with today, because we've been doing it for so long, those exist. We are trying to change that paradigm. A PIM, product information management system. A PIM is a broad brush term that is a small part of MDM, Master Data Management, okay? That world is changing so much and so fast that we have found that that world works much better for the ANSI X12 product static information. What is in a inventory inquiry advice? Availability, pricing, that kind of stuff, okay? If that's in that kind of a document that you're sharing, right? You're sharing with us with customers. Remember that scenario I told you about, the customer that's emailing in a spreadsheet, we walk through and give them pricing? That's effectively an 846, even though it's not called an 846. And we're doing it today with our solution. It's called Partner Connect on an EDI side. But that's no longer the way we want you to do it. We want you to do it through this master data maintenance, because it's static information, it's not transactional. And we're gonna have that as a single source of truth. And I'm gonna go into more details on that part here in a second, but how to share. Connectors. I'm gonna spend a little bit of time, if you wanna get into more detail on this, we're gonna get into the concept called APIs. Everybody remember this email? By the way, this did come to us, you'll see it up the upper left, it came to us. We got this wonderful thing. I always have fun with this. This came on January 6th, right? Everybody thinks of January 6th as something else that happened a couple of years ago. Instead, you guys got your own January 6th. Okay? How many people are cloud today? Okay? How many, so the rest of you are on premise. How many people are gonna go immediately to cloud? They're on premise today. You're gonna go to cloud right away because of this letter. I thought so. Okay? You're gonna probably be on premise for a period of time. The key to this whole thing, how many people are using scheduled importer today? It sucks, doesn't it? All right, scheduled importer is how a lot of people do EDI. That's how they get the stuff in and out of P21. Instead, we about, I don't know if the number's right, I think it's 8 years ago, we started creating our own set of APIs. APIs, an application programming interface. What that means is, it's a way to integrate with P21 acting like a headless user. Until you integrate with P21, all the things we're talking about sharing doesn't make sense. We had that for on-prem. The cloud world gets to be quite interesting because now we can't put our software on their server. Epicor won't allow that. So all of our APIs we can't do. So now if you want mother's maiden name to come in on that order, and they're gonna send mother's maiden name and you got a DINA change, that becomes a problem in the cloud world because if Epicor's API doesn't support that, you gotta go and try and convince them to do that because I can't help you because Epicor is the only one that can. So that becomes a whole piece of how do I deal with sharing information is the connector aspect of it. Like I said, we can go into more detail. I just wanna make you aware of what's happening relative between the on-prem and the cloud world of dealing with these APIs, which, oh, by the way, Epicor is going to have to get into it. Let me tell you a little war story on that. If you've been in the cloud world, you've heard the term called TAPI. It's called Transactional API. In the cloud world, Epicor has some TAPIs, if you will. One of them is called Convert PO to Voucher. Well, the intent, remember we were talking about an A10 in, right? I get an invoice from a vendor. I want to take that invoice from that vendor and I want it to bring and put it in P21 from an EDI document perspective. That's great, you got an API. Sounds like convert PO to voucher. Cool, that's gonna do it. We just put this stuff in, rock and roll. Oh, guess what? We tried testing it. If the invoice dollar amount does not equal the total dollar amount of the PO, that API fails. So if you have a PO out there for $10,000 and the vendor sends you an invoice for $1,000 for the first shipment, sends you another one for $1,000, that $1,000 will never equal the $10,000. That API doesn't work. Think about that for a second. What's the odds that the invoice is going to match the PO dollar amount in total? Probably about 3%. Or better yet, have you ever gotten an invoice for multiple POs? Now you got it on the open supersede. That doesn't work either. So we're dealing with that. We're talking to Epicor. We're trying to get some of those things to work. So it's not just as simple as saying, hey, yeah, we got this taken care of. But we have some things we got to deal with. I'm going to kind of stop right now because this is where I get into the fun part. This is where I'm going to be where am I on time? Cool. Got about half an hour. Questions, comments. This is where I want to kind of let you guys give me some feedback before I start digging. What do you think? Scaring you? Exciting? Helpful? Sir?
I would say that, historically we've really been we're a distributor, trying to get data from our suppliers. It's just a nightmare. And it's crazy that they don't want to provide more because everything's represented on the web, even through distribution. And then it migrated to large clients. They want that information and they have more sophisticated systems. Today I got small customers, contractors that have sophisticated software. They want to exchange this data. So we have a bunch of challenges, but this is one of them is where is that central source of truth? Do you have a recommendation? Is that in P21? Is that an external pin? Is that
we can help you.
Gray Wolf? Okay, I figured.
Yeah. We can only help you as far as the data. So if the data's not clean, it's just garbage in, garbage out, right? We do have some ability for you to do some data scrubbing for obvious reasons. That's probably the bigger issue. It's not the fact that we can't help you do what you're asking for. It's now, okay, how do we get this data cleaned up? And that's the hardest part, and that sometimes requires human intervention. AI, I think, could help with this. I had a give it just 10 seconds.
Good.
Had a conversation with someone last night that they're getting a bunch of PDFs, sound familiar? Getting PDFs, and we're wanting to read that information so that it becomes scrubbed and put it into the PIM. So it's coming straight from like you said, they have the information available. We're looking into some of that kind of stuff. You're gonna say something.
Well, I guess where do you see most folks standardize on the central source of truth when it comes to taxonomy, categories, attributes? Because
Great question.
I mean, P21's not
So Keystone's our product.
great.
Just drill. Here's the thing. Here's what I want to start with. This is the paradigm. I think you bought into it, but I would wager probably 80% of you, and more importantly, 80% of the people here representing organizations don't buy into what I'm going to talk about right now. This is the world most everybody in this conference believes. The world revolves around Prophet 21. If Prophet 21's not accurate, if it doesn't have it supported, if it doesn't do those things, everything else, it was funny last night, so they said to us, oh, so Grey Wolf's a bolt-on company, right? We bolt on to P21 because the world revolves around P21. Well, then I've got my e-commerce solution, my catalogs, my trading partners, all of that's gonna come out of P21. And that's gonna be the single source of truth. I want you to do this. I want the single source of truth to come from product management. Instead of the term buyer, I want you to use the term product manager. This is a paradigm shift. This is going to be hard for some people to even buy into, and I've been talking about this for about 3 years now, and I'm still just nibbling at the edges right now. But if you have the center of the universe is the product, think about it. You are distributors. Your sales organization. What is it that you do? Pardon my French, but you buy and sell shit. Okay? That's what you do. Like I said, I came from it. I understand that. You buy and sell stuff. That's it. So it's about the product. It's not about Prophet 21. And that's heresy with guys at Epicor, right? If you have it around the product, now we come back to what you're talking about, that the buyer is now responsible for maybe a product line, for maybe a manufacturer, for a given thing, and they get to know that product, and they become gods. They now set pricing. They now set what's availability. They now set marketing. They now set everything that's related to it so that it becomes a single source of truth, but now they've got to make sure it's accurate and consistent. And then the stars and the earth, Prophet 21, I made it to the earth on purpose, okay? But it just becomes one of those things. So to come back to your question, how do you do that? We've got to get it into a central repository, scrub it, clean it, and then use it for syndication to put it everywhere else out. Best example, I was looking at a table, nightstand for my house, and I went online and looked at the website, and it was a nightstand that said it was 18 inches high, 18 inches wide, and 21 inches deep. And when you looked at it, you could tell it was a square top. Well, how do you have width and depth different sizes when it's a square top? And I'm like, I went back to him, I said, which way is it going for this? Which is the height? They never responded back. If you have a central repository, you clean it up there, and then the syndication, sharing that information with the other places now becomes that consistent information to every place you're sending it to. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have Aldrich, for example, as a website. They have their own PIN, but you really can't do a lot with that PIN other than put it on the website. So how do you?
Do you want the $5 afterwards? So this is a great question.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I'm gonna sell you on why our PIN is different. And you know, Epicor's got one, they just bought one, right? Why would you wanna go with Grey Wolf? We are agnostic. We have no axe to grind. We don't sell an e-commerce solution. We don't sell an ERP solution. We don't sell we're not part of AD. We're not part of National NAW. We're not part of all those guys where we're biased. Every single one of those names I just told you, Aldrich could be one that we could share with, we could have syndication with. We are agnostic, so you need to make sure you get into a PIM that's agnostic so that you can share with whomever you want it to be. And I'll show you some of this.
How do you, okay, so we are AD, for example, so we have the AD PIN, and then we get it to the Aldrich PIN.
And you get into, and you have
So,
all
like,
these,
how
and
do
all
you-
you've done is you've done the same thing you've been doing, only
Right.
just in a whole bunch
But
more
how does
silos.
this third PIN now, is it just a third PIN?
Actually, you have one PIM,
Okay.
and you ignore the rest. You should have one PIM. Really think about this. You should have one PIM, one place. The term, single source of truth. Okay? You have one, and you share with everything else. So what's the cornerstone? What's the key to, by the way, we named it Keystone for a reason. What's the cornerstone to this whole thing? Integration with other stuff, right? The whole purpose of what I was just saying. Hold that thought. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to actually, where are we on time? All right, let me just jump to it. Okay? Let's get out of here. I'm going to do a demo. I have practiced this, and I guarantee you it's going to fail. Okay, I'm going to go into Keystone. This is our demo site. David, I am stealing some of your spreadsheets. I am going to, by the way, David's with Selecta. He is running this today. Not as broadly as I'd like to have him do it.
Early stages, we're
Early
getting there.
stages. Keystone, left side, and by the way, you would never see these bottom half. This is me coming as an administrator, but we're supporting products, collections, groupings of products, categories. Think about Magento or a website where you've got your categories on the side that you can go through. You can manage those here. Customers, going to be a whole nother conversation we can get into. But I'm going to get into the import mapping, drop-down options. Drop-down options are meant for the attributes that you're talking about with products, and maybe some other things where they're selection ideas. So instead of having a text field that has, say, amperage rating, you have a drop-down that says, okay, from 0 to 5 amps, 5 to 10 amps, those kinds of things where you make it discrete instead of making it open-ended. Keystone settings is the administrative option, and then the customer settings, I'm going to show you a little bit of that, of how you can use this. Let's take a scenario of what you're just talking about, okay? How do I integrate with all these other things? That's the key, and that's the reason why we chose this little symbol down here, and if I hover over it, it's going to say PIMcore. There are lots of PIMs out there that are open, that are agnostic. In River, Akinio, PIMcore, there's a whole bunch of those guys out there. We chose PIMcore, okay? Like the user interface, like what we can do with it. Let them go do the heavy lifting, and then we build on top of that. And what we built on top of that was focusing on exactly what you just said, integrating with the other stuff, okay? Now I'm gonna jump ahead real quick. I'm gonna click on this button. These are the things that we've already got. So for example, I can do a spreadsheet import. I can import products and attributes and categories. I can export them. I can put them into a spreadsheet and have those go out. I have the ability to update and refresh, so when I bring things in, I can have it populate some drop downs based upon what's in the database. I have the ability for products to push and get from P21. If you start getting into some other ERPs, that's what these are. Getting into Amazon. Oh, by the way, getting into Amazon, that plan on a whole bunch of effort on that because they mandate what the product categories are. You don't get to control it, and they change, which really sucks. So we can get that. Shopify, same thing, companies. Magento, anybody in here running Magento? Okay, we can push stuff to your Magento site, whether it be Adobe Commerce or the open source edition. We've got that working as well. In fact, that's what David's running, is he's running the open source edition. Sage is another third party. Let's go through, and what we're gonna do is I got a little folder out here called P21. I'm gonna do a simple little thing. I'm gonna show you how I did this in the first place. And you get to control this. I have this thing called 3M. And what I do is I upload the spreadsheet and say, I got a template. Well, what does that template look like? that template looks like this. All right, it's as simple as we've got inventory master ID, item description. We've got a whole bunch of other things. I will not get too far into CDN. CDN stands for Content Data Network, basically where you can put images out onto a CDN. Oh, by the way, Keystone is a CDN if you choose to do that. And I'll show you a little bit of that here in a minute. But this is a URL that goes to an image of it. Well, this is what it looks like. Well, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to bring that spreadsheet in. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna upload it, and then when you pull the drop down here for the source, it shows you all the column headings that you had for that spreadsheet. So you get to say where they get to come from. Then you go through and you say, okay, where do I wanna put it? And I can put, these are all the different things that are available in Keystone, of which they can be attributes. For example, these attributes include things like a series, short description, size. You control those. That's an unlimited number of attributes that you can control in this world. I'm gonna bring in item ID, item description, I'm gonna put those in these two places. So all I have to do, and by the way, to create this, it took me about 3 minutes to do that, but I just didn't want to go through that. I'm gonna do an import products. I'm gonna say, I wanna go against 3M mapping, you see these two mappings over here I choose from. If I keep that same mapping, use it for pricing, let's say. I can keep that same mapping, and every time a price update comes, I don't have to redo the mapping, I just bring in a new spreadsheet. I'm gonna go pick this spreadsheet. Which folder do I wanna put it to? I wanna put it to that P21 folder that I have, and am I going to update, create, or update and create? I'm gonna do update and create. Go back over to products now, do a refresh. Oh, good, it did get it that time. And here's all those products that came out of the spreadsheet. Now, what you're gonna notice is I brought in the SKU, and I brought in the description. Those are the only two fields I brought in. Well, guess what? Look at this. It doesn't have a name. I screwed up. Didn't put a name into it. How do I fix that? I'm gonna add a new field. I'm gonna add item ID. I'm gonna put that to the name field. Save and publish. Go back over here. My Keystone icon, spreadsheet import products. Pick that file. Bring everything. This time I'm just going to do an update, just for giggles and grins. Come back over here, do a refresh on the product, and the name's in there. Now, very, very simple demo, right? What have I just shown you? I can bring things in from a spreadsheet, manufacturers, put it into here. Now what I could do is I could take and go to the next step. I could do for, say, Aldrich, let's say they accept spreadsheets through their PIM, bring them in. I could say, okay, I want to do a spreadsheet export of the products. Now I'm going to go over to the customer settings, and in the customer settings, I have a spreadsheet export tab here. Oh, by the way, I have P21. I can say go P21 get limited. I can specify any of the fields that I want to bring in from P21. So I'm not bringing every field in from P21. I may only want to update certain things. Maybe it's just pricing, right? Or I want to do a spreadsheet export. In the spreadsheet export, I have certain fields that I can do, send out, and I can specify web or an FTP site with FTP user. I can have an email, so I can send it as an email. We're doing this today, web present's in here. So we're actually taking product information, we're sending it to the web presenter for their quoting. So that spreadsheet then gets sent out to them. So to come back full circle, one PIM, I don't know whether you use a PIM or the other on the other side, but that becomes a wrapper for their solution. And then that single PIM interfaces with that wrapper.
So we would import, say, from AD,
Yes.
all of the.
All AD, bring it in here, massage it, have it in different folders, move it around, update it with P21 information, update it with maybe your own internal spreadsheet information, and then take that and push it, say, to Aldrich. One little fun little thing I like to show. like I said, it's a CDN. You can actually have images. Oh, by the way, it's a mini Photoshop. You can actually save, modify it, put text to it, save it. Now you got a single source of truth for the images that are related to that product. Other questions? Then I'm gonna move on to what time? Cool, we got time. What do you guys think? Paradigm shift? Yes? Kind of hard to wrap my head around? Okay. Sir?
Sorry.
No. Yeah, I'd rather than not.
We, so from a sales reporting standpoint, obviously P21's our central source of truth, and we've got a reporting software that, we can run on various, categories and some of the taxonomy and whatnot. But if all that taxonomy and attributes live here, and we want to run reports and say, you brought up 5 to 10 amp circuit breakers.
Right.
How many did we sell last year? Does that data filter back to P21? Or?
The answer is it can if you want it to.
Okay.
Again, be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. Some of the things that we have included today, but we could do more, is these are some of the fields that we have basic, okay? But we also have the ability to add supplier information or warehouse product information. We can add more fields to this. So we can have pulling from P21, pulling usage, pulling sales for January by month, that kind of stuff. Put it in here, and oh, by the way, there is a set of APIs that we've got this working, not for your intent, but for original intent was, I want to use InDesign. Everybody familiar with InDesign for catalogs? We've got it where you can use InDesign to go query against this database from your location to get all the data back out of it. So theoretically, and we've got it with Excel, because it's using kind of an ODBC lookalike, that you could use ODBC with Excel and go do reporting and say, show me all the products that have usage of whatever, and pull it from here with the product static information. Now it's gonna be near real time, because I still say P21 doesn't go away. I'm not trying to sell that concept. It just has a different role. Its role is to capture the transactions and capture and have all the things. It's a great inventory management system. It's a great transactional system, but it's not as good for the static information. So I can get the transactional information from P21. Again, come back to the connector piece, right? We have APIs that support all that. But the question becomes, how often do we do that? Because how often does your report have to be accurate?
About a minute.
Yeah.
As requested.
Yeah, as requested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So, can you explain again, how then do you get it back into Profit 21, and how is that changing with the cloud?
Those are two questions.
Yeah.
I'll answer the first one easy. First one's easy is we just have a push. And like I was showing you here, I can have, let's see, where was I? That's customer settings, update options, I'm gonna add a new one. So all of our modules, oh, by the way, one thing I didn't say, every menu item you're seeing here is all schedulable, so you don't have to do it as a human being. So that you can have, every one of these steps can actually be run on a scheduled basis. But I can do a P21 product push, and I can specify which of the elements, what the conditions are, by which only the products that are whatever, that's what this condition is. I say, okay, for this field, only do it for these conditions that happen. The second part of the equation is the cloud. Today, based on what we know, assuming Epicor doesn't change anything, that's my whole caveat to the whole thing. We are able to do product information and all those kinds of things today because those APIs exist. Especially the GET, his request to get the information from P21, that's not gonna go away because they have a whole ability to download information from the cloud easily. It's putting things back into it that can be a little bit hairier depending upon what Epicor exposes to us. Today, product information is not a problem. But where we want to go with this is not just the static information, it's product information or warehouse product information as well, is also maybe customer information or warehouse, the specific warehouse information or those kinds of things. that's where we're gonna end up being dependent upon them. And we haven't gotten far enough along with customers to ask us to get into some of those things yet. So, but today for what we're doing, it's all there.
And you originally told me we didn't necessarily need the Profit 21 API in order to push. Cause you're saying, you're not using import export.
We're not using scheduled import or export. So we're not using that. Are you cloud? I can't remember. Okay, on-prem, yeah, you don't need that stuff because you'd use our APIs.
And you're using an API to get it, that's where I'm a little fuzzy, you're using the API to get it into Profit 21.
Yes, on-prem today, we can do anything
But
you
you
want.
don't need to buy the Profit 21.
No,
Okay.
no. So let me go down that trail, which she was asking. In the on-prem world, there is a tool that you can purchase from Epicor called middleware server, okay? That middleware server is effectively their APIs, and the latest I heard some numbers, and these are all rumors, by the way, so don't, I know it's being recorded, but approximately $40,000 is what I'm hearing for that piece, to get it on-prem. We have APIs that do the same thing, so we compete with that part of it, and ours are $2,000 a year. That's what we do in the on-prem world. The January 6th email that came out is changing everything, that we are no longer making heavy R&D effort into that, because you're all, whether you like it or not, you're gonna move to the cloud. Thou shalt do it kind of thing. So we're putting our R&D dollars into the cloud. In the cloud, they put that middleware server into the cloud, and my understanding is you get that ability when you sign up for the subscription for the cloud. So that's available to you in the cloud subscription. Those of you on cloud right now, is that a true statement, right? Okay. Okay, other questions? All right, let's go to the EDI side. This one's a little easier, or shorter to demo more than anything else, because there's really not much to demo. Oh, by the way, pricing. And by the way, this is on our website. Real simple. The first one's based upon how much data. So if we become your CDN for images and that kind of stuff, the amount of data that you're gonna be using is gonna go up. And then we charge you'll pay $60 a month for the module, for the P21 module. And then the other things, if you start getting into, by the way, the Excel spreadsheet import, export, is all part of the standard package. So if all you're ever gonna do is import and export spreadsheets and work with P21, you just need the first two columns. If you start getting into those that have Magento, or if you have Shopify or those kinds of things, that's where you'll get into those other modules that we'll have for non-ERP kinds of connections. All right, EDI, again, transactional based. Our solution is called Partner Connect. The way I'm going to demo this is a little different. Most of what I'm talking about is, I'm not going to show you like I just did of how we do a transaction, because in theory, you really don't care. You just care that it just happens. What you want to see is how do I deal with the exceptions? How do I deal with the problems? Well, what we've got, and I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on what the portal looks like under my account. And we have been doing this for so long. Why is this not showing? Oh, because I'm still in it. Sorry. All right, my bad. Let's get out of view. There we go. So, in my account, we have been doing EDI for, like I said, since 1997. We are now on version 6 of Partner Connect. I'm not gonna get into what the versions were, but the biggest difference between 5 and 6 is we have changed the architecture such that it's a hell of a lot faster to onboard, which is one of the biggest things that come into play, and for reporting and exception handling. That's where we really made the changes, because we changed the architecture so it's easier to do that. I'm gonna show you just a couple things on that. So for example, if you were to say, I wanna go do an onboarding, there's an onboarding form, pretty straightforward. All you do is you say, okay, this is who I am, here's the trading partner, here's some of the default IDs, here's some sales questions, who you want to come in as a quote, you want to come in as a standard order, how do you want to deal with incoming orders, how often do you want to schedule this. But the more important fun stuff is when I get into things like a document tracker. Now, anybody ordered online from Domino's? You seen the Domino's tracker? Very similar is what we're doing here. Same concept. Where do we stand? So how do we work? What's under the covers? When that 850 comes in, it comes into us, comes into our Partner Connect database, and then we push it to P21, okay? If it's going out, we get it from P21, put it into our database, and we send it out with our file format that is. So this information is all available in our database, okay? That also means that you can then update some of this stuff. So I can actually go into document submit resubmit. Let's take that scenario where it was an item that came in that wasn't something that you already had in there. Well, I may want to do a PO in. I may want to go look at that order. So these are all the orders that have happened. By the way, maybe this one errored because it didn't have something that I needed. But I can look at any one of these. I can then see the line items related to a quantity. And this one I can't because it's locked, because it's already in a process that the sales order's got a sales order related to it, and you have to fix it in P21. But if you brought it in as a quote or whatever, we allow you to change it, and then you can resubmit it so that you can have some self-service on how you deal with those exceptions. And then the last little demo that I want to do on this is the raw data. If you're doing EDI today, you would love to know, where do I stand on an order that came in? What did the data look like? If it failed, what did they actually send me so that you can go back and talk to them? Well, let's go look at a PO in. And these are all the POs that have come in. I can then go look at the actual content of what that looks like. Well, like in David's case, where he's doing PDFs, it'll be a PDF file. So you can actually see what the PDF looked like, which we processed. Like I said, demoing Partner Connect's easy because this is real. In theory, everything should just happen. But the exception handling is what you got to deal with. Make sense? Yes, sir.
I was just gonna share. We got into the EDI, and we've all dealt with it. It's the nightmare that's never gonna go away. I asked one guy, I go, when is EDI gonna progress? He goes, well, I'm not retiring for another 10 years, so. And he was the implementer of the EDI. But anyways, we had a major national distributor that we work with set up the EDI, purchase orders in, and the concept's great. You figure out what their part numbers are, you gotta match them up, in P21, you do it as customer part numbers or something like that. But to find out, this national distribution company, every one of their 1,000 branches had they're all using the same ERP system, but every branch got to assign their own part numbers. So now EDI seems real simple, but you've got that exception. In our case, we sell Duracell batteries, and a PC 1300 comes in. That's a standard number, but one branch falls at a AA. So we hit the exceptions, and we have to go back to each exception, work it out with that customer. Then future ones are set up, and that's across the board. With whether you're using Gray Wolf or somebody else, you're going to have to deal with those exceptions somehow.
And we've got we call it maintain cross-reference, so that you can have, if you have a spreadsheet that does this, we just import it and say, okay, here's the cross-reference, or import it, and then you go through and handle maintenance and cleaning it up one by one. But David's right, it's half of EDI's problems are not technical, it's people. And if people weren't inconsistent, it would be a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. Let me go back here. Pricing. We charge a subscription base. I am considering, I had someone come up to me the other day and said, we only have, anybody on TPCX? You know it's going away, okay? Had someone come up to me and said, yeah, we only have one trading partner, one document, and we're on TPCX and we want to move. I think we may come out, instead of an entry level, we may be having a baby bear, entry, which is up to 3 kind of thing, for the people that have 1 and do a lower price. So there's a possibility we may be coming up with that. But this is our pricing model. Pretty straightforward concept called a trading partner connection. So an 850 out, a purchase order out to one vendor is one trading partner connection. An 850 out to another trading partner is another one. 997 is another one. You add them all up, and if you're up to 15, you're at the low level. 16 to 100 is at the middle, and then unlimited, you're at the high end. Pretty straightforward pricing. That includes all setups, new setups, includes all new setups, includes all transactions. You don't pay for a van, you don't pay for killer characters, you don't pay for a document. It's all included, all inclusive on the pricing. Okay. So, sharing extends just doing good business. You're sharing your good business with everybody else. It goes beyond customers and vendors, even though that's what I brought you in on. Static versus transactional. Keystones for the static. Partner Connect is for transactional. Oh, sorry. How that got to the, that's really weird, that just jumped to the end, or the beginning. Let's do this. It's the fastest way for me to do it. This is all I was gonna do, but if you want my vitals, there you go. Questions, comments? How are we on time? Are we over? Yeah, 2 minutes over. We are inside. If you have any additional questions, want to talk, track us down, love to have it. Hopefully this is worthwhile. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for your time.